I am super excited to bring you the Season 3 version of Stormclaw. When I did my Druid tier list, I hadn't read the new items properly, and I didn't realize that Pain Gorger is actually going to be applying on every tick of damage, not just on each cast of a skill. That means stuff like Hurricane and Cataclysm are going to be popping off and making our damage go through the roof. So I put Stormclaw at an A in the tier list. I'm guessing now it's probably S tier. Of course, this is a speculative build because I haven't gotten my hands on the patch yet, but I'll be leveling it up and getting any new details into the written guide as soon as possible. I'll also give you an updated video as soon as I have enough to give you. Now, if you're not familiar with Stormclaw, the build's actually fairly simple. So the majority of the time, we're going to be dealing damage by using our basic attack. What's happening is we're using the Grey Staff of the Crone, and this is casting two basic skills at the same time, Claw and Storm Strike. Not only that, but Storm Strike is more effective. Now, our keystone passive is Bestial Rampage. What that means is if we're in bear form for 2.5 seconds, then we're going to get this buff right here. Damage increases for being a werebear. So that's actually a 30% damage increase. And then if we're in werewolf form, we get this one. That's a 30% attack speed bonus. Now they're actually reducing the timer after the patch in order to make this easier to activate. But even right now, after the initial 2.5 seconds and you get the buff, if you use another bear skill, you'll notice that it comes back on much quicker. I'm not sure why that is, but it is a nice thing to know because if you're in the middle of a fight, you don't want to be sitting there standing around for multiple seconds. So that cuts it down to about a second. And hopefully that's even lower after the patch. Using this keystone passive takes a bit of getting used to because you have to remember to stay in the bear form for the couple of seconds to get the buff. But it's definitely worth it because this is a higher damage increase than Ursine Strength, and it's 30% attack speed, which is very valuable for us. Now, I don't have them right now because it's in the new update, but Pain Gorger's Gloves is going to be very important for this build. So what it does is when you use a non-basic skill, like Hurricane or Cataclysm, for example, any damage done with that skill will apply a mark to the enemy's hit. When I hit an enemy with a basic skill, it's going to do 200% increased basic skill damage to all marked enemies. And since I'm using Hurricane and Cataclysm in this build, this is going to be applying new damage every tick. And we can even stack the Cataclysm on top of it so that we have additional damage sources and everything is constantly getting procced. Now, because of that and the other new multiplier that we're going to be having on our boots, that means that we're going to be focusing on multiplying the damage from our basic skills rather than focusing on lightning damage like we have in the past. So Overcharge is actually out of the build for the first time ever. Now, I'll have to test it once the season's actually live, but I'm thinking that Overcharge is not going to be as good as Edge Masters this time. So we use our bear skills to proc our keystone passive, but we can also use Debilitating Roar to reduce enemy damage by 70%. We can also use Hurricane to reduce enemy damage by 20%. We can use Trample to break CC or as mobility. We can use Cataclysm for damage, Claw for damage, and Bloodhowl is going to be a source of attack speed as well as healing. Although we are getting additional healing from Masochistic, so we shouldn't have to worry about it too much. But if you feel like you don't need the extra healing, you can always go Calm Before the Storm and get some extra ults out. So let me show you what some gameplay might look like. So obviously it's going to be a little bit different after the patch. We're going to have a shorter time in between our Keystone passive, and we're also going to have more damage and slightly different attack speed, but this is roundabouts what you'll be doing. So we already went through the skills. For our Spirit Boons, we're going to be doing Wariness, Scythe Talons, Avian Wrath, Calamity, and Masochistic. There's a couple of different choices here that you could go with. Calm Before the Storm, Bolster, Iron Feather, but I think this is probably the best overall setup, and you can adjust a little bit as you need. For our aspects, we're going to be going with Vigorous Aspect, Aspect of Disobedience, Pain Gorger's Gauntlets, Aspect of Might, Aspect of Adaptability, Great Staff of the Crone, Rapid Aspect, Edgemaster's Aspect, and Hunter's Zenith. I've still been debating whether or not I want to go with Tempest Roar or a Legendary Helmet, but either one will do fine for you. Now for the stats, if you go to the written guide, you can click on the little tab here in order to go to the in-depth breakdown. And for our helmet, we're going to be going with basic skill attack speed, total armor, all stats, and cooldown reduction. Cooldown reduction is quite important right now because we want our Hurricane to be ticking all the time so that we get that Pain Gorger damage. So much so that I would even consider using Storm skill cooldown reduction on an amulet. For our chest armor, we're going to use total armor, damage reduction from close enemies, damage while shapeshifted, and damage reduction. Now, I'm not 100% sure yet on how the constructs work, But the way I have the construct set up is to pull enemies towards us and to block projectiles. As long as we have a good enough uptime on those two things, then damage reduction from close enemies is the only thing we really need to focus on. If it's not a high enough uptime, then we might put a little bit of damage reduction from distant enemies as well. If you don't have the uniques, the stats are here for you in the written guide, but make sure you don't do the build without Great Staff of the Crone. For our pants, we're doing total armor, damage reduction from close enemies, damage reduction from distant enemies, and straight damage reduction. For our boots, we're going with movement speed, total armor while in werewolf form, all stats, and willpower. For our amulet, we're going with Ranks of Envenom, total armor while in werewolf form, damage reduction from close enemies, and movement speed. And then on our ring, we're going to go with critical strike chance, damage to close enemies, lucky hit chance, and maximum life. For our gems, we're going to be going with topaz on the weapon, ruby on the armor, and diamonds on the jewelry. There might be cases where you go with individual resistance types in order to hit your bonuses, but hopefully you should be able to just put diamonds in and call it good. For our Seneschal construct, we're going with auto defense. This is going to block enemy projectiles. Then we've got tactical support to reduce the cooldown of the skill, duration support to increase the duration, and safeguard support to reduce our damage while it's active. Then for our second ability, we've got lightning bolt, and we're using multi-shot in order to hit multiple enemies, and this is also going to chain between enemies. And gripping support is going to pull those enemies towards us. Then we have efficiency support. This is going to give us a 15% critical strike chance increase against those enemies for 3 seconds. If you need any additional info, I've got lots of info underneath the build. And then going into the skill tree, we're going to be putting 5 points in Claw, leading up to Wild Claw, 5 points in Storm Strike, leading to Fierce Storm Strike. We're going to max out Predatory Instinct and Digital Gate. Then we're going to go down and we're going to max Ancestral Fortitude, Vigilance, and then put 1 point in Blood Howl, going to Preserving Blood Howl, and 1 point in Debilitating Roar, going to Preserving Debilitating Roar. We're going to skip the companion tree completely, and then under the Wrath tree, we're going to max out Endless Tempest and Bad Omen. We're going to put 1 point in Hurricane, and go to Savage Hurricane. We're going to put 1 point in Trample, then we're going to put 1 point in Neurotoxin, and max out in Venom, and put 1 point in Toxic Claws. I had to go steal a point out of Debilitating Roar. I forgot to move my ult over. But for our ult, we're going to be doing Cataclysm, going to Supreme Cataclysm. We're going to max out Defiance, and then we're also going to max out Heightened Senses. And finally, for our Keystone passive, we're going to be doing Bestial Rampage. Now, if you absolutely hate going to Bear form for Bestial Rampage, you can always use Ursine Strength for the 25% damage. You could replace your Edge Masters with Mighty Storm's Aspect and go Earth and Might. You could go Nature's Fury and go for the Bulwark spam, or you can go Lupin Ferocity. Realistically, they're all going to be pretty good, but I think this one's the best one. And once they reduce the timer on getting the buffs, I think this is definitely going to be the best one for sure. For our Paragon boards, we're going to have Outmatch on the starting board. We're going to get all of our rare glyphs, and then we're going to move up. We're going to attach the Inner Beast board, and here we're going to be using Fang and Claw. We're going to get all of the rare nodes except for this top left one, and then we're going to be moving left. Here we're going to be attaching the Constricting Tendrils board. We're going to grab Devastation up here. Then we're going to go to our glyph, put a Territorial here, and get Courage and Nature's Will. Moving back across to the right, we're going to be attaching the Thunderstruck board, where we're going to put Earth and Sky, and we're also going to get the rare nodes here, and all the rare nodes leading down to the Legendary node, and the one past it. Moving up from here, we're going to be attaching the Heightened Malice board. We're going to be getting the Spirit glyph here, and we're going to get the one rare node. Finally, to the left, we're going to be attaching the Ancestral Guidance board, where we're going to get a couple of rare nodes, and we're also going to get Electrocution here. We're not focusing on lightning damage anymore, but this gives us a 20% multiplicative damage boost to the enemy we're hitting, which is really good. It also increases the damage from the lightning bolts of Bad Omen, so it's not bad. If you need a little bit more survivability, you can always pull the critical damage nodes out of the Thunderstruck board, and then you can go put them into the health around the different spots on the boards. You also always have the option of swapping Electrocution for the Werewolf glyph. I cannot wait to get in game and to get my hands on this. And I'll be streaming my leveling process live as soon as the season starts. So make sure you come join me at twitch.tv/Screamheart, and feel free to ask me any questions you might have. I'm looking forward to hearing you guys' feedback on the build once you get your hands on it, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Catch you later. With a net, I'll catch you with a net. No, not a net. Like the lady. A physical net, you know, like that.